Hey guys, Patrick here, and the deck that I made that got a 64% win rate into Master Ball actually got runner-up in a 1,000-player tournament that finished up today. So there's two things I want to go over in this video. Number one, I want to show you guys how to upgrade the 64% win rate deck with these two cards. Number two, I want to show you guys how to play a few matchups, including the matchups against the decks of the winner and runner-up of the first large tournament of Celestial Guardians with 400 players. So something to note, I replaced two of my cards to my Oricorio deck to make it more consistent against the current meta matchups. I added Guzma and removed a Rocky Helmet, since one of the main ways people dealt with the Yellow Bird is to do recoil damage through tools such as Rocky Helmet and Poison Barb. And Guzma is a supporter that removes all of your opponent's Pokemon tool cards on the board. The second thing that I added was a potion. I removed a Giant Cape, mainly because of Guzma again. Opponents are running Guzma in their decks, so we don't need to overexpose ourselves with Pokemon tools that can be removed. And in reverse, we want to ideally use Guzma when the opponent has two or more tools on the board if we can wait that long. One thing to note that if your opponent gets smart and only uses one tool at a time to play around a Guzma, then you can consider replacing the potion or the Giant's Cape with another Guzma. As I was making this very video, Oricorio actually won as a runner-up of a 1,000-player tournament. I did not copy or get any inspirations from them. I put together the idea of Oricorio and Magnezone by myself 2 hours into when the season started. This is their deck list if you want to use their version instead. How to play the matchup won't really change too much, so keep on watching. So the number one offender of abusing Pokemon tools against an Oricorio is Giratina. In this clip, I hit a 3-tool Guzma after trying to conserve as much HP on my Oricorio as I can. And the reason why you need to conserve as much HP as possible is because in a Giratina matchup, it's usually a battle of attrition. Giratina will try to retreat as much as it can while trying to poke down the Oricorio. Also while trying to deter us from attacking by equipping Pokemon tools. I made sure to retreat with the 10 HP Oricorio to send out my healthy Oricorio to ensure that my opponent can't just knock out the damaged Oricorio and use Sabrina to pull the Magnezone out of the bench and win the game. And in general, it is best to force your opponent to use a Cyrus on their turn if they really want to knock out that damaged Oricorio, so they can't use another supporter for that turn. Now would you look at that, he did exactly what we predicted, and now he won't be able to use another supporter such as Sabrina. I'll provide one more Giratina matchup later on in this video. If you guys enjoyed this video so far, please consider hitting that like button, it really helps me out a lot. Moving on to Solgaleo and Skarmory, the runner-up of the first largest Celestial Guardian tournament, consisting of 400 players. Link to both tournaments will be provided in the description below. I actually love playing against Solgaleo and Giratina decks with Oricorio since they are really fun games that requires a lot of thinking on our end. So ideally for this matchup, you want to start with your Magnemite in the active spot and Oricorio on the bench if possible, because the win condition is to knock out all of the Skarmory while keeping at least one Oricorio alive. If it is a heads-up battle between Oricorio and Skarmory, Skarmory will always come out ahead, considering that they have one energy difference in their attack requirements. Since we only had Oricorio in our opening hands, we are lucky enough to be going second, so we at least have a fighting chance. So with the Magnemite draw, we are in great shape, considering that we have a Magneton in our hands. I would say that putting the Giant's Cape on the Oricorio this early on was a mistake. Solgaleo decks usually do not run Mars, and the 4-card Mars would not have been that bad either. So you should always assume that the opponent will get a Poketool for the Skarmory. Those type of decks usually run at least a minimum of 4 Poketools. Now taking the attack from the Skarmory, doing the math, this doesn't add up to a proper knockout on the Skarmory if we attack with the Oricorio, even with a follow-up attack, unless we are able to draw a Magnemite. So instead, we pivot to focusing on knocking out the Skarmory with the Magneton by powering it up in this turn with the energy, so we can have 4 energies in the following turn with its Volt Charge ability. I noticed that we're still holding on to our Guzma, because right now it doesn't seem like there is a good opportunity to use it. Saving 20 damage on our Magneton will not swing the game in any way whatsoever. It's better to save the Guzma for a better opportunity in the future. We were able to knock out the Skarmory with the Magneton, but the opponent will follow up by knocking out the Magneton with their Solgaleo, which is fine, since we will be able to set up our second Magneton to threaten the last Skarmory. The opponent's only win condition is to have Sabrina, Skarmory, and Poketool all in his hands, otherwise we will win this game. So over here, we need to hope that the opponent does not run a Sabrina. From my past experience, they usually don't because a Solgaleo deck is usually pretty packed with the evolution line and the 4 Poketools and 2 lilies for heals. So it really depends on if they opted for the heal or for the utility from Sabrina. So here, even though we have Guzma to remove the Rocky Helmet, what we don't want is the opponent to put a second one on to solve the game. If they had a Skarmory, they would already put it on the bench. So I chose to attack here since the probability of them top decking a Skarmory while having a tool in their hands is risky, but it was a risk that I wanted to take, considering that we had a bad opening hand for this match, along with the Giant Cape misplay. Attacking also allows me to bluff, since it puts their Solgaleo at KO range if I have a Magnezone and red in my hands. The opponent took the bluff and retreated. Either doesn't have another Poketool or wants to save it for his Skarmory. So we are able to get free hits in. We drew our Magnezone and now we are in great shape. Even a Sabrina will not lose us the game now. We evolved the Magnezone since we have enough lightning energy already and we don't want to risk a potential Mars or I don't know. And while we are at it, we heal up the Oricorio so a Skarmory draw won't win them the game. So we keep on attacking, it doesn't seem like the opponent is able to draw another Poketool or their Skarmory. And luckily enough, they did not back off to let the Solgaleo with the Rocky Helmet tank the damage. The opponent draws a Skarmory and puts a Rocky Helmet on it, thinking that he's won the game. Since my Oricorio cannot defeat the Skarmory heads up, since the Skarmory got the first attack in, if I move my Magnezone into attack, the Rocky Helmet will deal 20 damage and put the Magnezone at KO range from a Solgaleo attack. And now it's time for the Guzma that we've been saving since turn 1 to shine. We get rid of the Rocky Helmet to attack, and the opponent then concedes the game. This game was a lot harder to play since we had a bad opening hand against our opponent's Skarmory start. I'll provide another clip if you want to see how to play with the Magnemite opening, which makes this match so much easier. Onwards to our next game, which is against the winner of the 400 player tournament, 2 Charizards and 1 Incineroar. We have our perfect start, Magnemite up front, and we draw our Oricorio for the bench. The idea here is the same. You don't want to put any damage on your Oricorio unless you need to. Meaning let your Magnemite tank some damage from the basic and stage 1 Pokemon, and then bring out the Oricorio if they evolve them into EX. Over here, I Sabrina my opponent so they can't evolve their Charmander into Charmeleon to KO my Magnemite. This also saves me from having to use my cape and potentially get Guzma. So right now nothing is threatening our Magnemite, so we decide to put an energy on to start attacking, We still have enough time to put enough energy onto our Oricorio if our Magnemite does get knocked out, and it just puts the pressure onto the opponent to make some moves. We have the perfect draw into Magneton to start powering it up on our bench. We put the lightning energy on the Oricorio so it can attack next turn if needed, which we will decide after seeing the state of the board. Since we had 1 energy on our Magneton, we can always get enough energy to attack with the Magnezone the following turn, which we end up doing since I don't see any EX on the board, so time for us to continue to knock out these non-EX Pokemon that can threaten Oricorio. You guys have to remember that this guy isn't bricking and our deck isn't just getting lucky. He is actively choosing to not evolve his Pokemon since he cannot deal with the aftermath of an Oricorio tanking everything. We evolve our Magnezone, and now we start sweeping the non-EX Pokemons. And if they do end up evolving their Pokemon, then they have to deal with the aftermath of the Oricorio. The opponent has 7 cards in his hand, and he knows he is outmatched, so he ends up conceding. So this is the full Giratina matchup gameplay. As you can see, I dropped back down to Ultra Ball at some point with my previous deck list, which is why I decided to adjust the deck list for these 2 additional cards, which makes this deck a lot more viable. We start off with the perfect Magnemite opening again. We draw into our Oricorio. We draw our second Oricorio, which is great news because we're going to need both at some point. The opponent gets their Giratina, which is good for them, but it doesn't matter too much in regards to this matchup. We just assume that they're going to get most of their Pokemon on the board at some point. Since we have 2 more turns before the Darkrai can attack, I decide to put the energy on the Magnemite to put some pressure on, as well as Sabrina. So that puts the opponent on a leaf to be able to attack me, or to spend the Giratina energy to retreat. At this point, I usually like to retreat with my Magnemite and start attacking with the Oricorio, since I like to force my opponent to Cyrus to get the last poke on the Magnemite. Otherwise, we can potentially evolve the Magnemite into a Magnezone later on in the game. But since we went first, the opponent is 1 energy ahead of us, so I decided to force my opponent to be on a leaf in order to knock out my Magnemite, which he actually has, so good for him. So I took a risky gamble with the professor's research over I don't know. For whatever reason, I really like this gamble. If you've seen my other videos, you notice that this tends to be the mistake I do a lot in the event that the opponent has a Mars, which a Giratina deck definitely has. But I just don't like the idea of not being able to maximize my I don't know with the professor's research combination. And now that we were able to survive that turn without getting Mars, we're gonna hit the biggest I don't know that I've ever seen. And then we get everything that we need. We get the Magnemite and the Magneton to ramp up, and hopefully we get the Magnezone in. And now I cape up to start reducing the number of cards in my hand to prevent the risk of getting Marsed. So now the stalling game begins. The idea is to attack when you can. If you are against Rocky Helmet or Poison Barb, then either Sabrina or Guzma to mitigate the damage on the bird. And on the opposite end, the opponent is gonna start retreating when their Pokemon goes below that Magnezone attack damage threshold. The opponent retreats his damaged Giratina so it doesn't get knocked out the next turn, and brings out the Giratina with the Rocky Helmet to start tanking. He Rocky Helmets his Darkrai on the bench in case we have a Sabrina, and then he capes his last Darkrai, which I think was a mistake. Maybe he was trying to prevent a Mars play or something. But now we get a 4-tool Guzma, which is the biggest you'll ever get. And now we prepare for endgame. We make sure that we're gonna have enough lightning energy for our Magnezone to be attacking in the next turn if needed. And we retreat with our 40 HP Oricorio to ensure that it doesn't get knocked out within 2 turns, if they do have a Cyrus or a Sabrina in combination with taking a poke damage. And would you look at that, they have a Sabrina. It doesn't matter too much unless they have another Sabrina and a Cyrus. Even though most decks don't run 2 Sabrinas or 2 Cyruses, why take that chance if we lose nothing on our end? If we don't have enough energy to keep attacking and retreating, then that's a different story. Now we pretty much won the game. We knock out the Giratina, so the opponent can't keep stalling by retreating. Since their other Giratina does not have any psychic energies, there's nothing to really threaten the Magnezone, meaning that we won't be overexposed if we lose our Cyrus through our Mars play. And then speak of the devil, we do get Marsed, but that's okay. We have dealt enough damage on the board for us to win the game, especially if we attack once more with the Magnezone. However, we do draw our Cyrus back to decisively end the game, which we probably would have eventually drew anyways, considering that it was turn 17. Our last game is a Solgaleo and Skarmory matchup with a Magnemite opening, which we like. We are going second, so this is perfect. We get the Oricorio, which is exactly what we need, considering that we don't have any of the Magnezone lineup in our hands right now. We put the energy on the Oricorio because we don't know if that Magnemite is going to survive the Skarmory attack. Because you never know that if they have a random Giovanni in their deck, which would knock out that Magnemite, or maybe they would Sabrina us and now we're behind for 1 energy to have our Oricorio to attack. And because our hand was so behind in building up a Magnezone lineup, we had to use the I don't know to get a chance to get a Magnemite and start building up. We weren't able to get the Magnemite, but we did get a Magnezone and a Professor's Research, so it does look a little bit more promising. We do a bit of damage to the Skarmory with the Magnemite. Even though it knocks itself out, we prepare ourselves to be able to knock out their Skarmory with the Oricorio plus heal. So normally if we attack the Skarmory now, our Oricorio would get knocked out due to the recoil damage, but since we have the heal, we use it to make sure that we stay alive at least until the second Skarmory comes out. If the second Skarmory does come out, then we pretty much lose the game, unless we draw something in the next few turns that will be able to contest against the Skarmory. A second Oricorio might be able to do it actually. And luckily enough, we draw our Magnemite along with the rest of the Magnezone lineup in our hands, and now we are going to be in great shape. We heal up our Oricorio again because the opponent's only win condition is to knock out both Oricorio, so there's never any point saving heals for the Magnezone. The opponent draws his second Skarmory, but doesn't seem to have a tool to pair it with. Even if he did, we will knock out the Skarmory with the Magnezone the turn after. And we do exactly that to seal the game. If you guys enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that like button. It helps me out a lot. If there's any other matchups you want to check out, let me know. Hope you guys did enjoy the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.